So, in the last class we have gone through the introductory part of the motor system, and today we shall discuss the more elaborate part. We have discussed earlier in the earlier classes, we have discussed about the different brain areas concerned with the motor function, that is motor cortex, premotor cortex, cerebellum, basal ganglia, brainstem and spinal cord. Okay, so this is the brief view of motor system. The functions we have discussed already, that is planning, programming and execution of skilled voluntary movements. Got it? Then we have discussed the coordination of movements, then stable background posture that is required for the skilled movements, and the reflexive behavior, okay, that is our stereotype actions, and finally it is an having integrative function, okay, that means how to respond, how to react, that is called as sensory motor integration. So, we have discussed this functional divisions of the brain, and we have highlighted the four major areas involved in the motor function. Yes. So, we have cerebrum, cerebellum, spinal cord, basal ganglia, okay, and the motor cortex. Then we come to know what are the common final pathways that executes the movement, and the effectors, that is the executors or effectors, that is the musculoskeletal system. So, today, and this is the hierarchical organization of the motor system. Yes. So, this is the brain, this is the spinal cord, and these are the different areas concerned with the motor function. So, the executive is the motor area or primary motor cortex, which is present in the frontal lobe. So, this is central sulcus and adjacent to it lies the frontal lobe. So, major portion of frontal lobe is devoted to the motor function. Yes. So, we have primary motor area, that is area number 4, 6, 8. We have premotor area, that is concerned with the planning of the movements. We have supplementary motor areas. So, these three areas are mainly involved in the motor control. Okay. Then underlying the brain structure in the deep core of the brain, we have basal ganglia. So, why it is called as basal ganglia? Yeah, it is lying at the basal part of the brain. Okay. That is why it is labeled as basal ganglia. So, there are 5 sets of nuclei present in the basal ganglia. Okay. So, we will discuss this in details when we come to the function of basal ganglia. So, we can see that the cortex is connected, there is to and fro connection between cortex and basal ganglia. So, these are basal ganglia. Then below lies the brainstem, which includes midbrain, pons and medulla. The brainstem has housed various vital centers, okay, respiratory centers, cardiac center, they are present in the brainstem. Behind brainstem lies the cerebellum. Okay. So, cerebellum has role in sensory function, in motor function, entirely in the motor function, no sensory function role. Okay. So, it is concerned with the coordination as well as balance, as well as maintenance of tone and posture, as well as maintenance of erect upright posture. Okay. So, this is the cerebellum, this is the cerebrum, okay, and then at the lower level lies the spinal cord. So, this is simply the hierarchical organization of the motor system. The spinal cord will send commands to the skeletal muscle, that is voluntary muscles, and these muscles will perform the actions or the required task. Now, coming to the topic, next topic is motor neuron and muscle relationship. Okay. You know, the spinal nerves as well as cranial nerves, they emerge out of the brainstem and the spinal cord. Okay. There are 31 spinal segments or spinal nerves and 12 pairs of cranial nerves. Okay. So, the cranial nerves mainly innervate the structure which are present in the head region. Okay. Few exceptions are there, for example, vagus, it travels a long distance, which is one of the longest cranial nerve. It supplies till the abdominal cavity or till the pelvis. Okay. So, what is the relationship between motor neuron and muscle? So, as you know that the dorsal root is sensory and the ventral root is motor. All the information enters inside the spinal cord through the dorsal root, then it travels upwards towards the brain for perception, for understanding. At the same time, the brain is sending signals for actions, okay, for movements. These signals are coming to the anterior horns, and from anterior horns the motor is exiting out. Okay, so inlet is through dorsal root, exit is through ventral or anterior root. So this is Bell-Magendie law, and in the anterior horn of the spinal cord lies the alpha motor neurons, or simply we call them as lower motor neurons. So when we talk about lower motor neurons, we have both alpha motor as well as gamma motor neurons. So these motor neurons in general, they supply exclusively to the skeletal muscles. Okay. Why do they supply skeletal muscles? Because they are common final pathway to execute the movements through the skeletal muscle. So there is definite relationship between a single motor neuron and the muscle fiber it innervates. This relationship is called as motor neuron muscle relationship. So in this relationship, the unitary concept is called as motor unit. Okay, so what is motor unit? The single lower motor neuron, mainly alpha motor neuron, and the number of skeletal muscle fibers innervated by it makes a motor unit. Got it? Okay. So when we talk about movement, and if we go to the elementary part of the movement, we have motor unit. ठीक है, थोड़ा सा भी मूवमेंट है तो वहाँ पे कुछ मोटर यूनिट्स वो मूवमेंट परफॉर्म कर रहे हैं, लेकिन हमें जब बहुत ज़्यादा फोर्स जनरेट करना होता है तो मैक्सिमम मोटर यूनिट्स विल गेट एक्टिवेटेड. So remember this concept of motor unit. What is motor unit? By definition, it is the single lower motor neuron. I am talking about lower motor neuron. So if you are missing the term lower motor neuron, then that doesn't make the motor unit. Okay. So the single motor neuron, mainly alpha motor neuron, and the number of skeletal muscle fibers innervated by it makes the motor unit. Now reverse, go reverse. You will understand the concept of muscle unit. Okay, what is muscle unit? A muscle may contain lakhs of fibers. All the muscle fibers are innervated by motor unit, but it is not same that a single motor unit, that a single motor neuron will innervate all the muscle fiber. Okay, so we have distribution from 31 segments of spinal cord: 8 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, 12 thoracic. So together we have this much segments from which the motor supply is coming to the muscles, but it is not very symmetrical. I mean to say that the vertebral column goes and spinal cord will stop growing. So because of that, the spinal cord ends at the level of L1 vertebra. Rest of the vertebral column will go. Rather, the cord is pulled upward. Okay. So at the end of the cord, we have arrangement similar to cauda equina. Okay, that is the tail of horse. Okay, the hairy tail of the horse. So spinal cord resemble like that. That's why it is called as cauda equina. So there is unequal distribution coming from each segment and innervating different muscles. For example, brachial plexus in the upper limb. Okay, it has contribution from cervical and few upper thoracic segments. Okay, and the innervation of what depends on the embryology. So in embryology there is concept called as dermatome. So from dermatome, yes, or segmental development is there. So from dermatome there is definite muscles arising, there are definite sensory structures arising which are innervated according to the dermatome. Okay, dermatomal rule. So we have muscle unit. It simply means that the all muscle fibers innervated by single motor neuron makes the muscle unit. यहाँ पे क्या था? Single motor neuron innervating definite number of muscle fibers, that is motor unit. यहाँ पे क्या है? मसल के अंदर के जितने भी मसल फाइबर्स है उनको जब सिंगल मोटर न्यूरॉन सप्लाई करता है तो वो मसल यूनिट कहलाता है. ओके, सो यू कैन इमेजिन that when the force is generated, say mild, moderate or severe, different proportions of muscle unit will come into action. Got it? That is the only significance. Then we can see the motor units are not uniform throughout the muscles. स्मॉल मोटर यूनिट्स कहाँ पे होंगे? जहाँ पे फाइन मूवमेंट्स चाहिए। फाइन मूवमेंट्स कहाँ पे हम एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं? फाइन ग्रेडेड मूवमेंट्स वी एक्सपेक्ट इन आईज, yes, muscles of digits or fingers, vocal cords, facial muscles, exactly, facial muscles. So we have motor units which are assigned to do the fine delicate movements. Okay, for example, eye movements are very delicate. Okay, suppose the target is moving by few centimeter, for that much eyeball movement should happen only. Okay, for that much we don't require larger motor units, we require smaller motor units, because eyes, they just don't encounter great degree of force. Okay, there we expect very little amount of force and the movement should be fine and precise. So the eye muscle, especially all the extraocular muscles, how many extraocular muscles are there? 4 rectus and 2 oblique and 1 LPS. Okay, 4 recti, superior recti, inferior recti, medial recti, lateral recti, superior oblique, inferior oblique, and one more LPS, that is levator palpebri superioris. These are the muscles which move eyeball in all direction, upward, downwards, medially, laterally, rotational movement, okay, movement along the axis, long axis of the eyeball, okay, and the eyelid muscle which opens the eye. Similarly, there are intraocular muscle also, muscles of ciliary diaphragm, sorry, muscle of iris diaphragm, okay, dilator pupillae and constrictor pupillae, muscle of ciliary body which is responsible for accommodation. Intraocular muscles are involuntary, that are not our control of our will, but all the extraocular muscles, they show conjugate eye movements. Okay, both eyes should follow the object in the visual field in the same direction. So these are paired muscles, they move eyeballs in almost all 360-degree planes. Okay, okay. So we have the motor units which include variable number of muscle fiber. Okay. So the smaller units containing few more fibers are required for generating smaller degree of force. Example is all the extraocular muscle, muscles of larynx. Yes, these are the voluntary muscles. Muscles of larynx are voluntary muscles which generate voice. All the swars or vowels, vowels are entirely originating from the sound box or larynx. A, E, I, O, U. Okay, A, E, U, A, O, Ah. ठीक है, ये कहाँ से आ रहा है? All the consonants, not only from tongue and lip, also from the voice box. So what we do while resonating, we just tense the vocal cords, the air is moving out. So voice is possible only in expiration, not in inspiration. कोई है ऐसा यूनिक जो सांस अंदर ले और फिर बात करे? कोई है क्या इस बैच में? हाँ, वो पीछे, ठीक है. So what we have larger motor units containing hundreds of muscle fiber required for generating greater force. Okay, one motor neuron innervating how much muscle fiber now? Not hundreds, but in thousands, say 2000, 3000. Where you expect these motor units? Back muscles, good. Leg muscles, especially the gastrocnemius muscle, which is present in the posterior compartment of the leg. Why it requires greater number of muscle fibers in a single? Yes, it helps in maintaining upright erect posture, and a consistent upright erect posture require contraction of large number of muscle fiber present in this muscle. So larger motor units are present in the lower limb muscles, especially extensors and gastrocnemius muscle of the leg. Okay. Then you can see from this figure, this is quadriceps femoris muscle, this is the transverse section of the muscle showing femur and muscle tissue, and the dark colored are simply the muscle fibers and these muscles fiber are from a single motor unit. क्या समझ में आता है इसको देख के? ये इसका अल्फा मोटर न्यूरॉन है, ये स्पाइनल कॉर्ड में है, ये इसके नर्व के जरिए इसको सप्लाई कर रहा है, और उसके जो मसल फाइबर्स इनर्वेटेड है दे आर स्प्रेड अप across the entire cross sectional area of muscle. This is single motor unit, okay, or single muscle unit. So what you understand from this picture?
They don't have to be together.
Yes, why they don't have to be together? When they contract, they will contract with the same force, and as they are spread across the entire muscle, the force is dissipated across the muscle. Got it? ये तो सिर्फ एक मोटर यूनिट है. जब मसल कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करती है तो एक मोटर यूनिट के भरोसे कॉन्ट्रैक्ट नहीं करती. एटलीस्ट 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 जितने भी कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करेंगे सबके फाइबर्स आर स्प्रेड आउट अक्रॉस द मसल. So the force generated will be dissipated across the muscle, and it helps in the physical shortening of the muscle. Got it?
Even contraction.
Yes, even contraction, exactly. So depending on the motor unit, we have seen smaller motor units, we have seen larger motor units. Similarly, we have small alpha motor neurons which are innervating relatively few muscle fibers to generate smaller degree of force. Larger motor units naturally are generating large amount of force. So these motor units, they also differ, or the muscle fibers present in these motor units, they also differ to generate the differing degree of forces. For example, in slow or smaller motor units, the muscle fibers are relatively red, rich in mitochondria, and are dependent on oxygen for their metabolism. So where they come into action, since they are fatigue resistant, have rich capillary blood supply, and have plentiful mitochondria, they are required to generate smaller degree of forces. S type of motor units are required to generate smaller degree of forces. Then we have F type of motor units, which contains larger muscle fiber but lesser degree of blood supply. They appear somewhat white in color. White muscle fibers, they are also called as white muscle fibers. So these are red muscle fibers. Another are the larger alpha motor neuron, which are innervating larger pale muscle fibers that generate greater force but for a shorter degree of time. Okay. So the abundance of red muscle fiber will be more in the posture maintaining muscles, like the back muscles, like the leg muscles, gastrocnemius, okay, because they need to contract in a sustained fashion over a longer period of time. ठीक है, लेकिन अब आपको चलना है या आपको रन करना है, ठीक है, तो आपको कौन से मसल फाइबर चाहिए? आपको चाहिए फास्ट मसल फाइबर्स. यू हैव टू स्प्रिंट, यू हैव टू रन, यू हैव टू जंप. You will recruit now the F or faster type of motor units. They are again classified in two types: fast fatigable and fast fatigue resistant, FF and FR. So what is fast fatigable? Yes, they are helpful for shorter period of muscular activities like running, sprinting, jumping. And the fatigue resistant, they will work for you and they are resistant to fatigue as long as the severe degree of muscular activities continue. Okay, got it? So the force generated exactly differs, exactly double from that of slower motor unit, and tremendous amount of work done can be achieved. So this is the diagram which will show you the representation of recruitment of motor units. Okay, है ना, एक स्टेबल एक्टिविटी है, ज़्यादा मूवमेंट नहीं है, तो स्लो टाइप ऑफ मोटर यूनिट्स विल बी रिक्रूटेड. एज द इंटेंसिटी गोज ऑन इंक्रीजिंग, फास्ट फटीगेबल मोटर फाइबर्स विल बी रिक्रूटेड. एज द इंटेंसिटी कंटिन्यूज फॉर लॉन्गर टाइम ड्यूरेशन, फटीग रेजिस्टेंट मोटर यूनिट्स विल बी रिक्रूटेड. सो वी हैव दिस साइज प्रिंसिपल, है ना, कोई भी एक्टिविटी है, माइल्ड डिग्री की एक्टिविटी है, सबसे छोटा मोटर यूनिट विल बी रिक्रूटेड. मॉडरेट डिग्री की एक्टिविटी है, yes, somewhat intermediate or large degree of motor units will be recruited. And finally, when the activity is immense, intense, we have fast fatigue resistant motor units. So, S motor units, then fatigue resistant motor units, and finally fast fatigable motor unit. The sequence has been revised, it can be better understand from this picture. So, this is simple standing activity. So, there is recruitment of slow motor units. As the activity changes from walk to run, we will recruit fatigue resistant motor unit, and finally we are approaching the finishing line and we want to win the competition, we will recruit fast fatigable motor units. So, this is orderly representation of recruitment of motor units according to the size principle. पहले छोटा मोटर यूनिट, फिर फास्ट फटीग रेजिस्टेंट मोटर यूनिट और फाइनली फास्ट फटीगेबल मोटर यूनिट को रिक्रूट किया जाता है. नाउ कमिंग टू द इनर्वेशन रेशियो ऑफ मोटर यूनिट. व्हाट डू यू अंडरस्टैंड बाय इनर्वेशन रेशियो? Yes, a single motor neuron innervating the number of muscle fiber. For example, in eyes, the innervation ratio is very less, 1:3, 1:4. Now you can imagine, है ना, जो आंखें बिल्कुल थोड़ी सी हिलती है, क्यों हिलती है, किसके बदौलत हिलती है? Very fine gradations of movements happens in the eyeball. This is because of the smaller motor units. In case of singers, they can modulate their tone, their voices. How? By tensing and by relaxing the vocal cords. Okay, they can they can sing in low pitch as well as extremely high pitch. How this is achieved? This is achieved by recruitment of particular motor units. Okay. Then larger innervation ratio, we discuss this thing in the gastrocnemius muscle or in the muscles which control our posture. So, there are two means by which the force generated by the muscle can be increased. One is size principle, just now we discussed. Another principle is also there, that is called as rate code. So, what is rate code? I want the same motor unit to be persistently active. I will generate repeated action potentials in the alpha motor neuron. I will simply increase the rate of firing of alpha motor neuron. That is nothing but the rate code. Another one is recruitment of size principle. Okay. Smaller motor units initially, followed by fatigue resistant, followed by fast fatigable. This will gradually increase the amount of force generated by the muscle. To increase the amount of force generated by muscle, I can also increase the rate of generation of action potentials. Okay. So, this is the rate code principle for generating the muscle force. आर यू गेटिंग माई पॉइंट? इसका एग्जाम्पल क्या है? 500 ग्राम वेट उठाना है, 5 किलो वेट उठाना है, 50 किलो उठाना है, ठीक है, उठा के 5 मिनट उठा के रखना है वेट को, है ना? यस, ये दोनों चीज़ें काम में आएगी. आई वॉन्ट टू लिफ्ट द सेम, आई वॉन्ट टू हैव एंड्योरेंस एक्टिविटी, that is to lift it for at least 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I will use rate code. Got it? Got it? So, this is the diagrammatic representation showing the orderly recruitment of motor unit. ये है मोटर यूनिट्स, ये सबसे छोटा मोटर यूनिट है. मान लो इसमें 10 मसल फाइबर है, इसमें 50 है, इसमें 100 है, इसमें 500 है, इसमें 1000 है, इसमें 2000 है, इसमें 10,000 है. डायरेक्टली इसको सिमुलेट करो, काम तमाम करो. ऐसा करना है क्या? क्यों नहीं होता ऐसा? है ना? मेरे पास आई हैव ऑल द मोटर यूनिट्स which can lift the weight up to 50 kg. I want to lift 5 kg or say 500 grams of weight. Shall I use this larger motor unit? Why not? Exactly. The body will try to conserve the energy at all the times. Got it? तो मुझे छोटा मसल यूनिट यूज करना है. ये कौन बताएगा? वो दिख रहा है सर, 500 ग्राम है, स्मॉलर यूनिट रिक्रूट करो, 50 किलो है, देख के डिसाइड करोगे? सेंसरी सिस्टम. It is because of sensory system. How? When you lift, yes, muscle spindle, because of the end organ or sensory organ, that is muscle spindle. Yes, देवांश क्या चल रहा है? So there is orderly recruitment of motor units. Okay, this happens in lungs. There is recruitment of pulmonary capillaries. Normally in tissues, how much capillaries are patent? Suppose there are 100 capillaries in certain tissue, the tissue is at rest. How many capillaries are sufficient to maintain the blood flow? Only 20 or 25%. When the activity in the tissue increases, more and more capillaries are recruited. Same thing is applicable here. Okay. So for precise movement, we have different sets of motor units that are required. For precise movement or skilled movement, like playing a musical instrument or writing or drawing, which involves skill, what we require? We should recruit large number of motor units, and each motor unit should contain few muscle fibers. We require, whenever there is requirement of less precise movement, you should have the orderly recruitment of fewer motor units with many fibers per unit, है ना? ऐसा नहीं है कि बहुत ज़्यादा फाइबर तो बहुत ज़्यादा फोर्स. प्रिसाइजनेस, है ना, प्रेसिजन. प्रेसिजन के लिए आपको कम लोग ही चाहिए, है ना, प्रेसिजन के लिए. गॉट इट? सो कमिंग टू द नेक्स्ट टॉपिक, that is organization of spinal cord. You might be knowing that the spinal cord is a part of central nervous system. It is extension of medulla down into the vertebral column. The spinal cord has both grey matter and white matter. So there is orderly arrangement. Grey matter is lying within the core, white matter is surrounding that core. There is central canal in the spinal cord which contains CSF, exactly, cerebrospinal fluid. The CSF provides nutrition to the grey matter and to the white matter. ठीक है, सारा न्यूट्रिशन CSF से मिलता है. उसका अपना ब्लड सप्लाई भी होता है स्पाइनल कॉर्ड का, लेकिन ब्लड ब्रेन बैरियर और न्यूट्रिशन परफेक्ट मेंटेन करने के लिए वहाँ पे CSF होता है. ठीक है. स्पाइनल कॉर्ड के अंदर जो ग्रे मैटर है, इट इज ऑर्गेनाइज्ड इन द फॉर्म ऑफ H और इन द फॉर्म ऑफ बटरफ्लाई. एग्जैक्टली. सो ब्रेन के अंदर उल्टा है, ग्रे बाहर है, वाइट मैटर डीप में. यहाँ पे वाइट मैटर सुपरफिशियल है, ग्रे मैटर डीपर है. क्या रीजन है? बताओ बताओ बताओ, तुम ही बताओ. तुम लोग बहुत पढ़ के आए हो पहले, अभी जरूरत नहीं है. मैं हाँ, तो ब्रेन में बाहर तो सेल बॉडीज वाला ग्रे मैटर है, वो अपने ट्रैक्स नीचे भेज रहा है. तो ये ट्रैक्स नीचे मतलब डीपर थे ब्रेन में. जैसे स्पाइनल कॉर्ड में आए तो ट्रैक बाहर की तरफ चले गए, ग्रे मैटर अंदर की तरफ चला आया. व्हाट इज ग्रे मैटर? कलेक्शन ऑफ सेल बॉडीज. व्हाट इज व्हाइट मैटर? दैट इज collection of axons. Okay, so the axons, they are less vascularized. Gray matter is much more vascular because it has cell bodies, that's why it gives grayish appearance. White matter gives somewhat whitish appearance because it contains myelin sheath and only axon fibers or nerve fibers. Got it? But another reason is that if you learn about the embryology of the brain doesn't develop from within. Which germ layer give rise to nervous system? Ectoderm is outermost embryonic layer. This ectoderm folds on itself, forms a canal, that is nerve tube or neural tube, and from the bulging of structures surrounding the neural tube we develop the brain. Okay, yes, correct. So because of forming of neural tube and because of folding of neuroectoderm, we have this type of arrangement, presumably. Okay. So the motor neurons, they are present in the ventral horn of the spinal cord. They are called as final common pathway or simply lower motor neuron. They include both alpha and gamma motor neuron. Got it? They receive synaptic connections from these structures. Spinal interneurons. क्या होता है spinal interneurons? So, interneurons are the neurons, shorter neurons having shorter axons which lie within the gray matter, and they take information on one hand from the spinal neuron, and on other hand it will give to motor neuron. So, the lower motor neuron present in the anterior gray column of the spinal cord which supplies the muscle, it is receiving inputs from spinal interneuron, it is receiving sensory input from the afferents which are entering through the dorsal horn and from the various descending tracts. Have you learned about ascending tracts? नहीं हुआ है अभी, सर ने नहीं किया है कवर, ठीक है. So all the sensations, they go towards the brain, they terminate at the same segment of spinal cord, they go towards the motor cortex, especially कौन से sensation? Touch, pain, pressure, vibration, kinesthetic sensation, proprioception, ठीक है. Conscious and unconscious joint position, that is movement sense. They also go to cerebellum, they ascend, they simply ascend, and they ascend in the 3 columns of the spinal cord. Which 3 columns? Dorsal column, lateral column and anterior column. Medial column नहीं होता है, ठीक है. और ये बनाते हैं अपने tracts. Dorsal column pathway. You will come to know about it in the upcoming sensory system classes. But remember, all the sensation when they enter into the spinal cord through the dorsal horn, they will immediately go to the posterior white column and ascend to the higher centers. Got it? Why do they ascend to higher centers? Because they should reach to your level of consciousness. You are sitting in the class, your eyes are open, you are staring the screen, your eyes are closed, okay? You are sitting on a comfortable couch, okay? Your hands are crossed, your legs are crossed. I am just giving an example. ये जा रहा है ना, consciousness में जा रहा है ना, mind में जा रहा है ना, है ना? Because you are alert, awake. किसी किसी को नींद आ रही है ना, कोई खाना ज़्यादा खा लिया तो झपकी आ रही है. तो अगर कोई सो जाएगा, if somebody is sleeping, will it go to consciousness? No. Yes. So all the sensations, they are sent to the brain. All the information, all information from the environment and from the body will go to the brain for its perception, cognition or understanding. Are you getting my point? Somebody pricks you or pinches you, you are assuming that this stimulus is not good, it is noxious, painful stimulus. ये समझ कब आएगी? Yes, जब सेंसेशन ब्रेन तक जाएगी. तो ये सारे ट्रैक्स जो होते हैं, डोर्सल कॉलम पाथवे, लैटरल कॉलम पाथवे, एंटेरियर कॉलम पाथवे, इसके अंदर ऐसे ट्रैक्स है जो ब्रेन तक ले जा रहे सारा इन्फॉर्मेशन. सिमिलरली वी हैव ट्रैक्स कमिंग फ्रॉम मोटर एरिया and other nuclei and coming to the spinal cord and supplying the lower motor neuron, that is final common pathway. These tracts are called as descending tract. Sensory ascending tracts, motor descending tracts. Got it? Okay, we will learn in details about it. So just remember, there are synaptic connections between the final common pathway, that is lower motor neuron, and these connections are from spinal interneurons, from sensory afferents, from descending tracts coming from frontal motor cortex and brainstem. See, the motor cortex is the executive. वो जैसा कहेगा वैसी मूवमेंट होगी. वो कहेगा कि बाइसेप्स कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करो तभी बाइसेप्स कॉन्ट्रैक्ट होगी, ठीक है. लेकिन दूसरे स्ट्रक्चर भी ब्रेन स्टेम में होते हैं. टेक्टल न्यूक्लियस, वेस्टिबुलर न्यूक्लियस, रेटिकुलर न्यूक्लियस, रेड न्यूक्लियस. Okay, these are other brain areas which also control certain movements. Okay, so what we have the BOS, frontal motor cortex, to control scaled voluntary movement. We have other brainstem structures which regulate control postural movements provide stable background posture for that movement to happen. Got it? So, in the spinal cord we have anterior horn which is motor. The anterior horn has arrangement of अल्फा मोटर न्यूरॉन, एक लाइन से लगे हुए अल्फा मोटर न्यूरॉन, लेकिन इसके अंदर भी अपने बॉडी का एक मैप छपा हुआ है. ठीक है. दिस मैप इज नोन एज सोमेटोट्रोपिक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन और ट्रोपोग्राफिक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, like the same sensory map which is present in the sensory cortex. Similar homunculus, बस ये है कि सर्वाइकल सेगमेंट में आपको अपर लिम्ब का ही मैप मिलेगा. lumbar segment of spinal cord will represent map for lower limb. Got it? Because upper limb, upper motor neurons will not continue till the lumbar or sacral spinal cord. They will end up in the cervical or thoracic region. That's it. So, arrangement कैसी है? What type of arrangement is there? In the anterior horn of the spinal cord, what type of arrangement is there? The neurons supplying the axial musculature, axial or midline musculature, the back muscles, the trunk muscles or the proximal most muscle. The neurons or the lower motor neurons in the anterior horn supplying the axial musculatures are lying most medial, and that supplying shoulder and pelvic region are lying lateral to it. Okay. So, this is the transverse section of the spinal cord. This is gray matter, it is having exactly H shape or butterfly shape. This is the central canal, this is the cervical spinal cord transverse section. The map of upper limb is like this. What idea? What do you understand from this map? पीछे, yes, Utkarsh, Utkarsh, stand up. What do you understand from this map? For the past 10 minutes we have discussed about this. So, what do you understand from this map? It has a representation, है ना? ये क्या दिख रहा है आपको? Shoulder, midline axial muscles, shoulder, arm, forearm and palm. What does it signify? क्या बता रहा है? दोनों तरफ, ये एक राइट हैंड है, ये लेफ्ट हैंड है. ये क्या लिखा है? प्रॉक्सिमल, ये डिस्टल. बताओ, ये जो है इसके बैकग्राउंड में ये एंटीरियर ग्रे हॉर्न है. इट मीन्स दैट द medial most part of the anterior gray horn represents the axial muscle, the intermediate portion represents the proximal muscle and the lateral most part of the anterior gray horn represent distal muscle. है ना ये बॉडी का मैप. सिट डाउन. सो दिस इज टोपोग्राफी और सोमेटोट्रोपिक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन इन द स्पाइनल कॉर्ड. व्हाई इट इज मस्ट? Yes, it will decide the involvement whenever there is lesion in these brain structure. Got it? So, proximodistal arrangement of the alpha motor neurons is there in the anterior gray horn. The most medial neurons supply the axial muscle, intermediate neurons supply the proximal muscle, and the most lateral neuron supplies the distal muscle. That is it. Got it? So, here you can see the white matter. This is the dorsal column, this is the lateral column, and this is the anterior or ventral column. Dorsal column में exclusively ascending sensory tracts है. सारा sensory information यहाँ से जा रहा है. Ascending sensory tracts. Lateral column में क्या दिख रहा है यहाँ पे? What is this? Name it. This is one descending tract coming from motor cortex and going where? Going to spinal cord. So, this is corticospinal tract which is present in the lateral white column of the spinal cord. The importance of this tract is that it governs all your skilled voluntary movements. Similarly, in the lateral column there are also other motor tracts रेटिकुलोस्पाइनल, वेस्टिबुलोस्पाइनल, टेक्टोस्पाइनल, रूब्रोस्पाइनल, ओलिवोस्पाइनल, 6-7 ट्रैक्ट्स हैं। लेकिन सबसे अहम, सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट कौन सा ट्रैक्ट है? कॉर्टिकोस्पाइनल ट्रैक्ट। कॉर्टिकोस्पाइनल ट्रैक्ट 2 टाइप्स, लेटरल कॉलम में रहने वाला लेटरल कॉर्टिकोस्पाइनल ट्रैक्ट और सिमिलरली वेंट्रल कॉलम में रहने वाला वेंट्रल कॉर्टिकोस्पाइनल ट्रैक्ट। जस्ट विल कवर एवरीथिंग इन डिटेल्स, डोंट वरी। Just for your information, I want to state that this is the dorsal column which exclusively contains sensory ascending tracts. The lateral column, it contains both ascending as well as descending tracts, and the ventral column, it contains both ascending as well as descending tracts. So, the spinal cord, it has both grey and white matter with definite organization of these structures. There are various ascending and descending tracts in the dorsal, in the lateral and in the ventral column. So, this is one half of the spinal cord, hemisection or half of the spinal cord. Similar half will be present on other side. So, you can make out some fibers are also crossing the midline and going to other side, commissural fibers. ब्रेन में भी होता है, यहाँ पे भी है, ठीक है। ये जो है, these are the anterior motor neurons, maybe alpha motor neuron also and also the gamma motor neuron. This is sensory root or dorsal root ganglion which is entering in the spinal cord, and these are numerous interneurons in between. लगभग almost 30 times more interneurons are present in the spinal gray column as that of द अल्फा मोटर न्यूरॉन। जितने अल्फा मोटर न्यूरॉन नहीं है उससे 30 गुना ज़्यादा इंटर न्यूरॉन्स होते हैं। क्यों? क्योंकि आपको मॉड्यूलेट करना है, इनिबिट एक्साइट, इनिबिट एक्साइट, इनिबिट एक्साइट, सर्किट चाहिए आपको। यू आर क्रिएटिंग, द बॉडी इज क्रिएटिंग सर्किट टू मॉड्यूलेट द मूवमेंट्स और टू इफेक्ट द इंटीग्रेशन। सो कमिंग टू द मोटर न्यूरॉन्स, ठीक है, वी आर फाइनली डिसेक्टिंग आउट, है ना। स्पाइनल कॉर्ड लोअर मोस्ट लेवल है of motor control. So, we are now discussing the spinal cord. So, we have motor neurons present in the anterior gray column of the spinal cord. What do motor neurons do? They control the movements, है ना। जहाँ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करना है वहाँ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करेंगे और जिस मसल को इनिबिट करना है उसको इनिबिट करेंगे। So, what we have motor neurons. These are the neurons that project from the ventral horn of the spinal cord to muscle cell. We understood the motor unit as well as muscle unit. Smaller muscle unit, larger muscle unit. We have also seen the types: S, slow type of muscle unit, fast fatigable, fast fatigue resistant muscle units, motor units. Now they are located entirely in the gray column, gray horn of the spinal cord. Now simple question I am asking to you: is it simply limited to spinal cord motor neurons? Then what are the other sides where you expect to have motor neurons?
Facial muscles.
Yes, in the brain stem, exactly. So, for all the cranial nerves, on occasion of party, what is the acronym for remembering cranial nerves? अच्छा, याद है आपको, हमने तो वैसे याद किया था। ओके, ऑल्फैक्टरी, ऑप्टिक, ऑक्यूलोमोटर, out of this how many are motor? Yes, which are those? Facial or oculomotor? 3, 4, 6, 7. Okay, 3, 4, 6, 7. Vagus. Vagus is motor? No. Sensory? Mix. मिक्स तो है लेकिन मोटर भी है फिर। और हाइपोग्लोसल, ग्लोसोफैरिंजियल, spinal accessory. So, most of the nerves are mixed nerve, and owing to their mixed nature they have to contain the motor neurons. For example, the oculomotor nerve, it supplies the muscles of the eye which are voluntary muscles, extraocular muscles. Fourth nerve supplying extraocular muscle. Third nerve is also supplying intraocular muscle as well, ciliary muscle and muscles of the iris diaphragm. है ना? No talking in the end. Come, stand up. You come and sit here. Both of you. So we have the two types of motor neuron, alpha and gamma motor neuron. Got it? Apart from spinal cord, they are present in the various cranial nerve nuclei. Okay. They innervate the extraocular muscle, the intraocular muscle, the muscles of face, the muscles of mastication, the muscles of tongue, intrinsic muscles of the tongue, and the muscles of larynx, soft palate and pharynx. Got it? Some muscles, that is muscles of sound box or larynx, are innervated by the these cranial nerves. Got it? So, apart from the spinal cord, the alpha motor neurons or motor neurons are also present in the brainstem, because all the cranial nerve, they simply arise from brainstem, except few, that is olfactory nerve, it do not arise from brainstem. Okay. It is purely sensory nerve. So, in motor neurons we have two types, alpha motor neuron directly innervating the extrafusal muscle fibers, the muscle fiber which generate the force, or the muscle fibers which allow the muscle to contract. The gamma motor neuron, it is supplying intrafusal muscle fiber or simply to the muscle spindle.
Sir, muscle spindles are sensory.
Exactly. यही तो खासियत है, तभी तुम ध्यान दोगे तो समझेगा. Only the one student has picked up. Yes, muscle spindle is sensory end organ, still it is receiving motor nerve supplies. That is the uniqueness of this receptor. It is the sensory receptor with a motor nerve supply. Any other example you know? Nice to point out. Very good. सेंसरी सिस्टम का पार्ट है मसल स्पिंडल. ठीक है. स्किन के अंदर जितने भी रिसेप्टार्स है, पैसिनियन रिसेप्टर, मर्कल्स डिस्क, मिसनस कॉर्पसल, फ्री नर्व एंडिंग्स, सारे सेंसेशन लेके जाते हैं. किसी को मोटर सप्लाई नहीं दिया है, लेकिन यहाँ पे ये जो गैमा मोटर न्यूरॉन है, ये है मोटर न्यूरॉन, और किसको सप्लाई कर रहा है? इंट्राफ्यूजल मसल फाइबर को, जो क्या है? मसल स्पिंडल है. और मसल स्पिंडल क्या है? सेंसरी एंड ऑर्गन प्रेजेंट इन द मसल. सो यूनिकनेस of muscle spindle is that it receives motor innervation. You can find out on your own, go through the books, you will get the answer. But my question is different. Do you know any other sensory receptor which is having innervation? Rods and cones को nerve supply होता है क्या? Motor supply होता है? हाँ?
Bipolar neuron.
That is the part of sensory system. I am asking any other sensory receptor which is having motor supply. This is part of motor system, na? Gamma motor neuron is part of motor system. That for rods and cones or for bipolar cell, there is phenomenon called as lateral inhibition, that is mediated by amacrine cell. Renshaw cells are again part of motor system. That is descending pain modulating pathway, it is not motor supply. Golgi tendon organ is a sensory receptor that detects the tension in the muscle. If tension is excessive, it will not ask the muscle to contract, rather it will ask the muscle to relax. You will come to know, I will not tell you at this point of time. If you do not get the answer, I will tell you. Okay, we will continue this topic. Alpha motor neurons and gamma motor neurons, they are simply motor neurons present in the anterior gray horn. Both of these are the lower motor neuron. Why lower motor neuron? Yes.
Because to supply the neurons, it's written over there, right? Neurons lying in the spinal cord or brainstem structure supplying the muscles of limbs and face area.
So why they are called as lower motor neurons?
Because they lie at the level lower than the brain.
Yes, and they are supplying directly. They are supplying
The
muscles. Okay, what do you mean by upper motor neurons? You sit down. Huh?
Supply, their supply is above the brain.
About above
Above the brain.
above the brain. They are called as lower motor neurons because they are the first point of contact between nervous system and the muscles. They are arising from the anterior gray horn of the spinal cord and directly innervating muscles. So, anything above this level will be included in the upper motor neuron. Anything beyond alpha motor neuron will be the lower motor neuron. Okay? ये नहीं समझोगे ना तो फिर आपको दिक्कत जाएगी. Sit down. So, both of these lower motor neurons, that is alpha and gamma motor neurons, they lie in the spinal cord or in the brain stem structure, that is the cranial nerve nuclei, and supply the muscles of limbs and face area. Okay, they directly innervate the skeletal muscle. If they are cut down, if they are damaged, if there is injury to these neurons, what is the consequences? If you cut down these circuits, if you cut down or damage the lower motor neuron, what are the consequences? What do you expect?
Sensory loss in that area.
सेंसरी क्यों हो जाएगा? ये मोटर न्यूरॉन है. अभी बात हो रही है मोटर सिस्टम की. मोटर मीन्स मूवमेंट. If you cut down or if you injure the lower motor neurons, if there is damage to lower motor neuron, what are the consequences? Will the muscle contract? Exactly. Sit down. The lesion, effect of lesion will be paralysis. Effect of lesion will be paralysis. सेंसेशन जाएंगे सेंसरी सिस्टम में. मोटर सिस्टम का कहीं भी लीजन होगा, आइदर वो लोअर मोटर न्यूरॉन में होगा या अपर मोटर न्यूरॉन में होगा, दैट विल रिजल्ट इन वीकनेस ऑफ द मूवमेंट. If there is this weakness is complete, we called it as paralysis or plagia. If this weakness is incomplete, that means some power is there, it is called as paresis. It is called as paresis. Complete paralysis, it is called as plagia. Weakness, paresis. Yes. So, the alpha motor neurons, now here is the crux. दो मोटर न्यूरॉन बताए थे हमने. अल्फा is supplying extrafusal, gamma motor neurons are supplying intrafusal or muscle fiber. Now, this is the diagram. You can make out. Anybody from you will explain this thing just quickly. पीछे से आएगा कोई? उत्कर्ष का दोस्त? नहीं, नहीं, not needed. Anybody from you? Yes. Come here. Come. Tell from there.
So first of all, there is muscle. So the sensory fibers are arising from the muscle. They then go.
You can omit this. You can omit the sensory input. Just explain these two. Black and red color fibers. That's all.
After entering into the spinal cord, is entering the gray column. So there are certain spinal interneurons. These spinal interneurons then go to the motor neurons, which come out from the anterior horn of the spinal.
Yes. So, this is the anterior horn and this is the
Gamma.
exactly gamma motor neuron and the black colored alpha motor neuron. When this is activated, the muscle will contract. When red color gamma motor neuron is activated, muscle will contract or not contract?
Won't contract.
It won't contract. It won't contract.
So then why do we call it motor?
That will learn. आज ही सब खत्म कर दो क्या मोटर सिस्टम? कल से आना बंद कर दो. ठीक है. So we'll learn about it. So simply remember, this is transverse section of spinal cord. The blue colored is the sensory nerve fiber from the muscle. Okay, that is from the Golgi tendon organ. This is one sensory receptor in the muscle. This is another sensory receptor. This green colored is 1A afferent, 1B afferent from the Golgi tendon organ entering into the spinal cord. Spinal cord में क्या जा रहा है? सारा इनपुट जा रहा है, सेंसरी इनपुट. और यहाँ पे क्या बन रहा है? एक सिनेप्स बन रहा है. ठीक है. और ये सिनेप्स के थ्रू डायरेक्टली इट इज एक्टिवेटिंग द मसल. For example, this muscle reflex is known as stretch reflex. It simply tells us if you stretch the muscle, the reflexly muscle will contract. Muscle is not a rubber or elastic that stretching the elastic and releasing it, it will regain its original shape. It is not like that. It is because of the operation of this stretch reflex. When the muscle is stretched, it will respond by contracting within physiological limits. Got it? Within physiological limit, it has some significance. If you stretch the muscle, you will generate a greater force. Which law is this? Frank-Starling's law. This is the stretch reflex. This is the spinal cord and this is the circuitry demonstrating the stretch reflex. The alpha motor neurons are responsible for generating force from the muscle by stimulating the motor units. The black colored neuron is actually supplying n number of muscle fibers and activating the n number of motor units, leading to contraction of the muscle. The gamma motor neurons, the red color neurons, they are again called as motor neurons, but they are not innervating any extrafusal muscle fiber, rather they are innervating the intrafusal fibers or muscle spindle. I am just keeping silence about this. I will explain this thing to you again when we learn about stretch reflex. That's all. Here I have mentioned already. If you can point out, to maintain what is muscle tone? Partial state of muscle contraction. Do you have muscle tone at present?
Yes.
It is must.
Except in REM.
Except in
REM sleep.
it will decrease. It will not be abolished at any point of time. Unless and until there is injury or damage to the brain, it will not decrease at all. Even in upper motor or lower motor neuron, in lower motor neuron the muscle tone is completely gone. But that is not the point of concern right now. So just remember this thing. We have muscle spindle and its function is to maintain muscle tone. Now what is the significance of muscle tone? We will come to know in due course of time. So we will conclude for today. In the next class, we will again discuss in further details about the spinal cord and its function. Okay. Can you give me a piece of paper?